Elsa Hahne is a native of Sweden who has been living in New Orleans since 2002. She came to the city on a lark, met and fell in love with her husband, fell in love with the city, fell in love with the food. She writes a food series called The Gravy for Offbeat, a monthly magazine focusing on the New Orleans music scene. The series features local musicians' food stories and recipes. Elsa is the author of You Are Where You Eat, a 224-page tour of Crescent City home kitchens. It features recipes, stories, and photographs illustrating the wide culinary and cultural diversity found in New Orleans. On January 28, Elsa visited Kalamazoo Public Library for a reading and book signing. We caught up with her to ask a few questions about her inspirations for the book and what she learned about how folks really eat in New Orleans.
Well, I always loved to cook, and I always loved to eat, and I always loved to make portraits of people, and I always loved food photography, and all of that sort of I just combined all of those things that I love to do this book.
Okay, great.
And New Orleans was just the perfect place to do it.
Yeah.
There's not just the 33 portraits in the book, there's also the other 100 that I also interviewed and did like a complete series with, basically. But then I made the selection for the book just so that I could represent the different neighborhoods and the different cultural groups, etc., that have come to New Orleans and become part of New Orleans over 300 years. So this is a selection. So what pops up in my head is not just the people in the book, but all the other people I've talked to, and how they, in my head, they're all talking to each other and exchanging stories with each other.
Okay, great.
So it's very hard to pick just one, because they're all chattering up here all the time.
Have you made any lifelong friends from the book?
I have, actually. I have. I knew the wife of Golden Richard, for example, in the book. He's one of the Cajun contributors, and I knew his wife very briefly, mainly by sight, but also by name, before the book. But then when I started working on the book, I found out through her that her husband was a really good cook. So the first time I interviewed him was the first time I ever talked to him. So they have become very, very good friends of ours since. And there's other people that I met throughout this project that I have just the most amazing respect for, both as cooks but also as people. And I mean, home cooks tend to be sort of spider in the net, kind of, you know, like a central point of a community or a family or a neighborhood. And so they're very charismatic people often, and just very interesting and very connected. So they taught me so much, and I keep, you know, trying to reconnect with most of them. This book is totally about food. It is all about food. Everything in this book is about food. But it's also food as a way of talking about life in New Orleans, and New Orleans culture, New Orleans history, what it means to be a family member in New Orleans, what it means to be living in a certain neighborhood in New Orleans. So it's all about food, but what people are really talking about is their whole life and like everything that comes into play. So it really is sort of a looking glass to look at the city of New Orleans in this pretty awesome way. And food was such a given topic because everyone in New Orleans cooks, pretty much. It's very, very difficult to walk anywhere without talking to somebody about what you cooked yesterday or cooked the day before, or how you like to fix this opposed to that, and oh, I do that, oh yeah, my grandmother does that too. Like that conversation goes on, and food is very public. I know, I mean, I grew up in northern Sweden, and everyone in Sweden talks about the weather all the time. If they talk about anything, they don't talk much. You know, they don't talk much in general, but if they talk about something, they talk about the weather. In New Orleans, you don't talk about the weather, you talk about food all the time, to strangers, to your family, to people at work. It's just all ever present.